Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Review. All right, my loves. Well, I hope if you're an American, you had a wonderful 4th of July. Today, we are going to be getting a bit intense. So I have some dark romance recommendations for you. And this is focusing on healing, intimacy. I'm trying to be careful saying certain words at the beginning of my videos now because some of mine have been getting throttled a little bit. That does happen. But you should be able to tell by the title of what this one is or where we're going with it. I have made one other video like this, and it was B to the S to the B to the D to the S to the M as sexual healing. I don't know what I'm saying. Whatever. You know. And to be honest, mostly when I want to write about like healing intimacy, it usually does involve some form of that. Not every single one we're going to go over today has that, but that entire video that I'll link does, as well as you'll see a couple overlaps from that video and this one just because I'm revamping the video. It's been 3 years since I've done it, so most people probably haven't seen that. This video was actually asked for by 5 different people in my video recommendations form. I do have a video recommendations form. It is linked in every video, as well as my book rec form. They're very long lists at this point, but I still mine them for content all the time. I just recently went through and made a list of another 4 or 5 videos that I'll be working through this month that were put into my video recommendation form. So you can find that below. But the one who put their name in was Brooke. The other 4 were anonymous because you don't have to say your name if you recommend it. But this is something I really love. I talk about it in a lot of videos when I see it happen. And again, I usually see it in BDSM scenarios. We'll just say it now. Hopefully we're good. But it doesn't only exist in those. So usually we're going to be dealing with, it was specifically a sexual trauma and using BDSM to help give the person control and to help them work through that. It also could be from an abusive relationship or from some other, you know, they just were not being in previous relationships and so they didn't know that intimacy could be the way that it is. Those are all different ones we're going to talk about. So yeah, like I said, for the most part, these will focus on BDSM, but they're all ones that I find very beautiful. And it also makes the intimacy very powerful because it's someone who previously had bad experiences is finding out what being in that moment with a partner who completely sees you, completely loves you, and is helping you find equal pleasure as them, as well as focusing on your pleasure. Like there's so many aspects that go into it. So yeah, some of these I'll have more to say about than others, but they all have some aspect of that to me. So here we go. We're going to start actually with a series that I consider this to be healing for a couple of the men in the story actually. And this is a very, very dark series. And that is going to be the Frozen Fate series, which isn't completed yet, but I find that most of the healing that I'm seeing is happening in these 2 books anyway. This is a very dark series. I have to have a Pam Godwin on here when I talk about this type of thing because she's one of the first authors that I became aware of what I was reading, right? Like if you watch my first video about this, I have her in there a couple times as well, particularly with Dark Notes, where it was very obvious to me that that's what was happening. So the way that this series has healing for me is also what makes it very dark. That is why I am listing this one as Dark Romance Rex, just because it's usually the characters have made it through a trauma for sure. But in this one we have men particularly who have been abused since a young age. They have not had really any healthy sexual relationships at all. There has been abuse, there has been force, and none of it has been consensual at all. And then we have Frankie, who gets brought into this situation through kidnapping, and she's very reluctant to care about these men. But as she uncovers the horrifying truth of what's happened to them and why they're also in this frozen wasteland and what's going on, she becomes extremely protective of them and is willing actually to go to great lengths to not only save them, but to help heal them from what they've been through. So there's some very powerful scenes throughout both this book and the next book that have to do with that healing and these men actually taking their power back. They are alphas. It's not to say they aren't powerful, but in the times when they've been assaulted, they were forced to cede their power. And that was what their abuser got off on, honestly, is making these powerful, strong, beautiful men submit to them in a cruel fashion. And so we have Frankie, who she herself is willing to submit to them to help them have their power. So there's so much happening in the sexual dynamic here that Pam does, on top of the hell that we're all going through at the same time. And that's something that Pam does very well in her Deliver series, which is, again, talk about that in the other video. So yeah, this series is not for the faint of heart, but if you enjoy the dark and heavy, there could be some gems in that for you. Okay, then we have Sinful Vows by Lillian Harris. This one's a bit more straightforward for, you know, what the healing aspect is. I also wouldn't find this one quite as emotional as some of the others because Lillian Harris doesn't spend as much time dissecting it as we'll get in some of these other ones. But that's okay. Sometimes you don't want it that level all the time, you know. We're all in different moods at different times, for sure. But this one is the first book in her Messina crime family. And I mean, I'm not lying, it does start out dark. I just mean our heroine isn't as tortured by it as some other ones, might be right. But our heroine in this and two of her friends are actually kidnapped in the beginning, and they're forced into sex trafficking, and they are a part of it for many years. When we come upon her now, she has this opportunity to escape. She's forced to leave her friend behind because she's the only one who can make a run for it. And through some luck and also some, you know, quick thinking on her part, she actually becomes the arranged wife of this mafia guy because he needs a wife to appease his father. And he also has some stuff going on behind the scenes where he needs to make an appearance that he is following along with what his dad wants, so shall we say. So yeah, that's a very interesting scenario. But through this, you know, our heroine, she's only had forced situations, you know, during all those years where nothing she did was consensual. And now to find that she herself is attracted to the man that she's with, and that she can say no, and that there can be this push and pull between them, even though he's also very dominant. I just found it to have a bit of that healing aspect, again, without being quite the level of gut-wrenching that you sometimes find in it. You know, there are all different levels to everything, so I do recommend. Okay, then, it's funny, I've talked about this book in, it's weird how it works where once you get on a track of certain recommendations, they come up again and again. But I do want to recommend Soar High by Cherise Sinclair, which is the last book in the Sons of the Survivalist. And again, as I said in my caretaking video, you should kind of start at the beginning because this series really builds on itself. The first book is Not a Hero, which I actually just reread. I'll be rereading the books in this series, and I'm so happy about it. Like, honestly, I love them so much. But this one we have Hawk, and he has his own type of healing journey he's going on. He was abused as a kid. He is a, like, wounded man in a lot of ways. He's a grump. He's a scarred hero. But in the book before this, he actually helps rescue this woman. Yeah, he helps to rescue this woman from a cult, and her son takes to him quite strongly. And so Kit and her son end up staying with him because her friend who's the one who kind of spurs this rescue mission, her friend is already now in a new relationship, and Kit just kind of she doesn't want to be picked at all the time by her friend, even though, again, her friend is the one who made this happen, who loves her, who rounded up the Mako's sons to help rescue them. She's just exhausted from everything she's been through. She's been abused. She's been raped. She's been fighting for survival. And she's just very, shook up, And so Hawk ends up being kind of her reluctant yet diligent caretaker. And eventually, when she's very attracted to him, Hawk is able to, be very patient with her and tell her, there's no rush to anything. You're not going to let me down. If you get scared, if you need to back out, if you need us to stop and pause, there's nothing about this that so what if I go to bed with a boner? So what if I go to bed unsatisfied? It's about being here for you and us finding pleasure together. And I love that about him so much. And this one is a quieter type of book. I mean, even though this one has some more action in it, it's romantic suspense. Obviously, Kit got away, but there's people who still want her back. It's not going to be as simple as that. But it's quieter in the fact of the people moments are just quiet. And these sons of the survivalists, I love them. They're so steady and dedicated and true. And I just love that about them so much. It's so great. So yeah, I highly recommend. I hope this series gets another boost everywhere. But Cherise Sinclair actually writes quite a bit of BDSM as healing and sexual healing. I have not by any means read her extensive backlist, but I've read a few, and there was some of that in those as well. So if you don't want a romantic suspense, you could check out her, one of her other BDSM series. This one's much less heavy on that at all. There's not really BDSM in this one at all. It's just about that patient and loving aspect. Okay, next up, we have one, slippery books falling all over the place. Okay, next up we have one that I did mention in the previous video, but it's one that I adore when it comes to sexual healing, and it's my favorite book by this author. I honestly wish that her most recent books were at the same level as this one. I feel like they're not, but that's okay. That doesn't mean it undoes my love for this book at all. And we have, of course, Savage Tracker by Maggie Cole. This is a part of her Ivanov series. You could read this one as a standalone if you want, because the 5 books in the Ivanov series, which I actually have behind me, they all are kind of taking place at the same time, they overlap and everything. Although book 3 does kind of directly lead with this one. But in this we have Obrecht and Selena, and Selena is getting out of a very abusive master-slave marriage. I say that because she didn't have any choice in this marriage. She might have legally been married to him, but he was forcing her to stay there. And she's been with him for 20 years. She was basically wooed by him and then made into his lifelong slave, and it's devastating. She finally got the guts to leave him, and that's what, in book 3, as I mentioned, leads into this, because that one is actually about a lawyer, and I think it's Cora is her name, helps her get that divorce. And to protect her, Cora asks her beau at the time, who is I think it's Obrecht. It's either his brother or his cousin, because there's cousins and brothers in the first 5. They're related somehow. They own this high-rise condos, and they get her a home in the same building as Obrecht. And so he's kind of keeping an eye on her. And one of the things that they both become aware of is, even though she was in a forced, she was in a master slave that isn't even the same as a master slave dynamic. She was a slave, but she very much feels like she still needs the control of being in a BDSM relationship. She knows that's probably fucked up. She knows that her brain has probably been forcibly like changed by this man, but she also can't help it. And there's certain aspects of submission that she finds comforting. And so she starts looking into what there is in a normal realm, you know, like not a dynamic that is forced on her, to see if that can help her. And Obrecht, actually, he is a top. He won't even call himself a dom because he just likes to like play on the side. He doesn't want the responsibility of being someone's dom, which is totally fine. He likes to just go play, go to a club, do his thing, and then go about his life, right? And when he starts checking in on Selena, he notices certain things about her and the way she is about men that she might be interested in it. And so through some kind of fumbling around on their parts, he agrees to kind of help her, show her what a healthy BDSM relationship would look like. Because if that's what she's going to need, he wants her to not be taken in by another abuser, you know, because there are predatory doms out there, you know, just like her ex, who would also try to force her into something. So what begins as he's just supposed to be like kind of showing her the ropes and showing her what can actually be pleasurable about this, find out what her limits are, teach her she's allowed to say no to things. That's one of my favorite things in a BDSM healing, when you learn the power of a true dynamic where you may be the submissive, but you're actually in control of certain things, right? Like, it's never a complete, you know, you're ceding your control, but you still are able to walk out. And so I really like how they both learn, because again, Obrecht doesn't think he ever wants to be responsible for someone or be someone's dom. And as he gets drawn in deeper with Selena, he realizes that he does want that with her. And I love that about them. So this also has some super hot scenes. I mean, one thing Maggie Cole always does is bring the heat. What I love is when she also brings the heart. And for this book, and again, a lot of books in the Mafia Wars series, that to me is her like peak storytelling, because I just felt so connected to all of them. So I highly recommend this. As I said, if you don't want to take on a 10-book series, you could just read this one. Hopefully it gets you interested in it. All of her books have kind of some level of BDSM to them. There's the Russian brothers and then the Irish family. And Ruthless Stranger is still almost tied with favorites for this. And then one of the later books in the series too, Ruthless Hunter. Is it Ruthless Hunter? No, Relentless Hunter. Sorry. That one also has sexual healing, and it's a second chance between two people who find healing that way, and it's beautiful. But that one, you do need to read the other books because it's a culmination of like the entire series. And this one you could just step into if you wanted to. So, by the way, just a reminder, I do have links down below to all of these books. If you use my Amazon affiliate link, whether for buying the ebook, buying this book, buying other products, it does help out the channel. Actually, anything you purchase the day that you click my link, it does all go towards my commissions, just so you know, in case you know. Sometimes I have things like people's pre-workout gets counted, which is great. And actually in July, Amazon is doing kind of extra incentives for us too. So I'm just putting it out there. It's another way to help the channel if there are already things you want to buy based on my recommendations. Please don't think of it more than that for that. I also am trying out the YouTube shop option. I don't know how good it works, but it's not it's like linking to Barnes & Noble for some of them. Barnes & Noble doesn't have every book that I'm talking about, so I can't link them all. But anyway, just a little aside, that's one of the ways you can support the channel besides giving this video a like, leaving me a comment about one of your favorite books. That does all help us here. So after that little mini ad break, let's move along. All right. Then we have Brutal Vows by J.T. Geisinger. This is the 4th book in the Queens and Monsters series. Now, first up, I'll say this before we get into it. This book, you cannot buy this copy anymore unless you're going to the scalpers out there. These books are being recovered right now, so you can listen. You can still get them on Kindle Unlimited, but these ones you can't buy a physical copy yet. It won't be available till next year, unfortunately. But you can still read these on ebook, and I mean, they're amazing. So yes, this one is book 4 in the Queens and Monsters, and this one is about Raina and Spider. Now, Raina is considered the Black Widow. She, as I said, she's currently a widow, and she's part of the Irish family. And, oh wait, no. She's part of the Italian mob. She's going to be marrying into the Irish family. But anyway, her niece is 18-year-old, and she's supposed to basically be like sold into marriage to the Irish. That's what's going to happen. And Spider ends up being the volunteer to have this marriage because his capo, his boss, is already married, so he can't be the one given in this arranged marriage. And Spider, who has had his heart broken recently, oh, poor Spider, he is willing to do this arranged marriage. But he's supposed to marry this 18-year-old Italian girl, and he gets confronted by her aunt, Raina, who Raina survived an abusive relationship herself. She may or may not be the reason that she's a widow, who's to say, but she's determined that her niece will not be sold into marriage the way she was at a young woman and have her innocence stripped from her and be abused the way that she was. And on top of that, her young niece is actually already in love with someone else, and so being married off to Spider would just be horrible. But what are they to do? This alliance needs to happen. And so there comes a point where the only solution is if Raina marries Spider. And he actually is extremely okay with that. He's been attracted to her this whole time. There's been these like negotiations for the marriage, and he, just kind of brushed it off as nothing's going to happen. But now this woman is like right in front of him, and there's a possibility for it to happen, and he's just like, oh shit, I'm taking this by both hands. Now, there's definitely some healing that needs to happen for her because she was, again, in an abusive and forced marriage. She was forced to be with this old, creepy, abusive man, and she'll be damned if she's going to be forced into any intimate things again. The only thing is, she's extremely attracted to Spider, and she finds that very inconvenient. She would just like to have her romance novels and her toys and not have to deal with this at all. But Spider, he's going to do his darndest to convince her otherwise. So there's some wonderful scenes in here. There's some beautiful healing actually for both of them. Something I absolutely adore about this book is that, they do a bit of like switching in their dynamic. Just the natural push and pull. There's actually some beautiful praise that she gives him, which I love when I read. I love when she puts that in a couple of books where, yes, he still has a lot of dominant aspects. They have these great sexy times, but she is a little skittish in some aspects. And he's just over the moon that he's with this woman. Something that JT does is this like worshipful aspect so well. Like, it's so good, the worshipful aspect that she does. And there's this moment where they're together, and he just needs to hear that he's doing a good job, not just with, sexing her up, because he's doing a good job with that, but he just wants to do right by her. He really does. And he's been rejected time and again by other people that he's loved. He's been hurt by a woman that he loved. And so he has a lot of insecurities. He's this big, tough, gorgeous man, and he has a lot of insecurities. And so I really liked when she saw that and she calls it out, and she's like, you protect me, you pleasure me, you're so good to me, I appreciate you. Like, literally, she's like, you are the best to me. And he just melts into a little puddle. It gets him so turned on. He's almost like coming on the spot. It's so hot. But there's also a wee bit of role play that happens in here that is divine, y'all. The role play that happens, girl. It involves a lusty lady who needs to be impregnated by her warrior husband, and it's good. So anyway, JT is a true gem. Okay, the woman is a true gem. And I am very happy these are being published mainstream. I absolutely am. Pen Pal just had its release. And the fact that that book is going to be on shelves everywhere, I really love. And so the fact that this series, which was a complete 6-star series for me, is going to be in Barnes and Nobles and like Walmarts and Targets. Like, shut the front door, okay? That's amazing. Okay, moving on. Okay, now we go to one that is we have some real heavy hitters to get through now. This one, I would say God of Fury fits this category for sure. Not only is this a like bisexual awakening that happens for Bran, we already have Nico, who is, I mean, proud of who he is. He's spicy. His dick likes who it likes, and that's everyone. He'll tell you his dick likes everyone, but it particularly gets an affinity for one Brandon King. And Brandon King, as far as he knows, is straight. And so he literally is like, it's a bit over the top. He literally is like talking to his dick like, you can't be attracted by this guy. We don't go for the straight boys. We don't go for the straight boys. It's too much drama. But Bran just gets under his skin in a way that he can't explain. And in return, he wants to get under and in him as well. So Brandon, he is a beautiful, sweet soul, my beautiful lotus flower, like for real. He's been through some pretty devastating things he's kept hidden from his family because he didn't want to let them down, because he didn't want them to feel shame, which they absolutely would not have. You know, it's one of those where it's like, baby, like, you don't deserve to feel this way. But Nico's the one who sees it. Nico sees that about him. And as he pushes him, because he does push him into some sexual situations to start with. But the freedom and the acceptance that Bran ends up finding through that is beautiful. And when we fully learn at the end of this book what Brandon's trauma actually was, we learn that, like, Nico has been doing right by him this whole time. And we just never even realized it. And Nico's the one who is crazy enough in a lovable sense. But honestly, Nico does have his own mental health struggles, so I shouldn't put it lightly and say crazy. But when you read him, you'll see there's a difference between what his mental health struggles cause him to do and when he's just being whacked out and like going nuts. Like, they're two separate things. One of them is very serious and the other one is just Nico's personality, right? But he is wild and dominant and forceful enough to push Brandon to those situations where there's room for healing to happen. And it's really beautiful, okay? It's really beautiful. I love this book so much. This is one of my favorite books from 2023, and it makes the journey of reading The Legacy of Gods worth it, which I had a great time. Anyway, I'm not saying it was a struggle, but reading the books to get to this one, and especially God of War 2, but especially this one, so worth it. It was so. We have a historical one to share. We have Surrendering to the Duke by Stevie Sparks. This was her debut book, actually. And this is Lords of Desire. And this one is one I love talking about. So I will say, this is the one, like, the cover is a bit deceiving for this one. This is actually takes place in 1920, I believe. It takes place in between the world wars, actually. So I was a bit surprised by, like, the cover of it. But this is a brother's widow situation. We have our hero, Michael, who was the second son. He went to war. He fought. He, did his duty that way. He was a second son, so he was allowed to do that. His older brother was the Duke, and, he died recently, left behind a wife and child. And now Michael, we learn, actually has had a thing for his brother's wife this whole time. Funny enough, there's another Michael I know who had a thing for his cousin's wife. Anyway, that just popped into my head because of all the Bridgerton stuff that's been going on lately. But anyway, Michael has stayed away from home because he feels so much guilt that he's wanted his brother's wife, and now he's the Duke and she's a widow, and it's just too hard to see it. But when he finally does come home, not only is his mother very much pushing him towards dating, well, it's not dating, but you know what I mean, towards courting Emmeline and making her his wife and keeping her as the Duchess, because she already is. So it's like, keep her as the Duchess, keep, you know, the niece, like, as the heir and all that, to keep her close. And now Emmeline, she was married by the brother as kind of a safety thing for her. She was in a really horrible situation, and we find out more about this through this book, the abusive and predatory place she was at before she met Michael, or Michael's brother. I can't remember his name, so that's why I'm saying that. And she is afraid of having to go back to that. And, you know, if Michael finds a wife and that wife would be the new Duchess, then she would feel like she needs to leave with her daughter to not, like, be in the way and all that stuff. And so Michael, who, again, he has been into her for a very long time, he just is feeling very conflicted. And as he makes it known that he would like to court her, she tells him of, you know, I don't want to have sex. Actually, the relationship with your brother, we created our daughter and we haven't been together because of that. It was really a relationship of mutual respect, and he saved me. Like, she says that. She's like, I loved him in that way because he rescued me. He's given me my daughter. He made me a duchess. Like, he did all these things, but it was more of a friendship. And in fact, her deceased husband actually had another love that he, you know, kind of put aside to marry her and rescue her. So, like, there's so much complexities going on with this. Sorry, not doing a full review of this book right now, get along. But the point being, when Michael decides to court her, he says, he's like, well, I don't want a marriage in name only. My mother's encouraging me to marry you, but I would want a real marriage with you, and I actually really care about you, so please let me court you, let me try to win you, let me show you that I can be good and gentle and kind husband. Now, he is a bit into BDSM, which isn't, I don't think it's quite called that in this, but he wants to show her some power that she can have, and so we see that sexual healing aspect happen. There's a super hot scene, one of their first, like, intimate scenes together is, I've put this in a video before that's called Quick Off the Mark, because he actually comes in his trousers while giving her cunnilingus, and I love a scene like that, okay? Literally, I have a whole video about it, okay? So you could check that out if I remember to link it. Otherwise, check it out in my oddly specific recs. And yeah, there's just something really powerful about what he does. And I thought this was a very unique historical. I'm not someone who would normally want to read a, like, 1920 historical. That's too late for me in general. I've only read a couple that are. But I will tell you that I thought this one was very well done. And again, this cover isn't the best cover. It doesn't really convey that this is kind of like a 1920s. But the second book in the series, which is Despising the Duke, that one does have, like, a flapper girl on the front and is about Michael's sister. And I really liked that one too. So yeah, check this one out. It's great. Stevie Sparks doesn't get enough love. Okay, we'll go through these last ones a little bit quicker here. So we actually have a fan fiction that I have to share, and that is In Silence and Submission by Jillian Eliza. Yes, this is my gorgeous copy that Mel made me. Look at it, okay? You're doing so well, my sweet girl. Look at this book. It's beautiful. This book is a Friends to Lovers Dramini. And Hermione has just gotten out of an abusive relationship with Ron, and she's really struggling. And it's actually some of their friends, like Harry and Ginny and Theo and Pansy and Blaze. They all kind of encourage her to actually, like, try going out with Draco. And again, her and Draco are friends. And they're at this, like, friends dinner, and some talk of Ron is making her very uncomfortable. And Draco kind of, like, has a, like, moment where he, like, orders her to be still and, like, breathe. And he uses his, like, Dom voice on her. And he doesn't mean to do it, but he also sees that it works. And it actually helps, like, helps her be centered and, like, calm. And so later on, like, they have a little, like, checkup about this, because he's like, hey, I kind of stepped over the line, but I also saw it was helping. And also, like, I'm attracted to you. And also, would you want to try this? So all of those things kind of happen, and she talks with some of their friends and learns that some of their other friends are actually into BDSM as well, and Draco has helped other people with this. He's trained other people as well, and they're attracted to each other, and he's like, let me help you, and this could be really good between us. And so he does. He ends up really helping her, and they find this amazing connection with each other. And this one has so many hot things in it. Like, this one has cock warming to help her through a panic attack, and it has just all the good, sexy, magical BDSM things, and I just love it. This one and Contradictions are like two of my very favorite fics. But again, don't go buying a copy of this anywhere. I also don't know, I actually just had a thought. Jillian Eliza might have removed this from AO3. I can't remember now. I might feel bad if I recommended this and we can't find it. If I find the link to it, I'll put it down below. If not, I apologize if I just recommended this and you can't read it. But it's one of my favorites, and I have to talk about it when we talk about sexual healing. So yeah, it's one of my very favorite stories. It's so good. Okay, then we have Terrene by Amara Ray. This one is book 5 in her Immortal Coven series. I always hesitate when I bring up this series because it is a series that the last book never came out. But I am hopeful. I believe in it. I believe we'll get a miracle someday because I've seen things happen. Amara Ray kind of like poofed out of the book world. She's just gone. I actually have interviewed her on my channel. I have an interview with her, and I adored her. And she had all these plans for where like a series was going to go next. And then I assume something must have happened in life and she just couldn't keep going. Writing is often a side job for a lot of authors. And, you know, they do it because they love it and it's their passion, but it doesn't always mean that it pays the bills, right? But this one is about Cassandra and Raziel, and Cassandra has actually been very abused, and Raziel is her mate. And there's a rift between the realms, and he needs his mate to succeed. And the problem is there are aspects of their relationship he would have to betray to succeed in what he needs to do. But he also has this mate who she is very broken and hurt by the things that have happened to her, and he can't help but want to help her because she's his mate. And so there's some very beautiful scenes of, this is like the slowest burn in the series that she has. This is a series that has like shifters and witches and things, and he, I believe, is a demon, because there are like fae and demons and like shifters in this series. And I believe Cass is a shifter. I think she is. I can't remember. She's a shifter witch, maybe. It's been a hot minute. Oh, look at this. It's so beautiful. And, but he's a demon. And yeah, they work on a healing journey together. But this one deals with like trauma and self-loathing, because Cassandra, the assaults that happened to her, she had body betrayal when those happened. Like, she got wet. She even like orgasmed when she was being assaulted. Part of that had to do with just that happens sometimes. You don't need to be magical or have anything paranormal about you. Sometimes that happens. It's a body's like response to what's happening to you. But she also found like pleasure in it, and it's very like, it's tough for her to like accept that, we'll say. So yeah, they have some very powerful scenes together for sure. Good, such a good series. The first one in it is Lifeblood, and yeah, I just really love that series. Even if it didn't get finished, it's okay. There's still lots of good stuff in it. All right, then I want to end this off with a book that I just finished. It just released. It's a standalone within a series, but as with a lot of these, I think you get the most out of this one if you start with the beginning. But the author does provide a lovely little like previously on, like in the beginning. So I read The Mist Thief by L.J. Andrews, and in June I actually read The Ever King and Ever Queen, which are the ones that come before this. But this one is a kind of forced marriage between Jonas, who is what type of fae is he? I can't even remember what type of fae he is, but he's a nightmare prince. He can torture people with their nightmares, but in reverse, he also sometimes gets tortured with nightmares. It's very like a heavy burden to have. And our heroine, her name is Scotty. Yeah, Scotty. Skadinia is her like long name, but Scotty is what she goes by. And she has this power to like, is it like unmaking? How does it even work? Or she can like disappear things, I guess. It's explained in the story, you know, it's one of those where it's like hard to say it. But the more she uses her power for bad, the more she loses her humanity. And in previous books, she was being used by a bad man, and so she lost a bit of her humanity. Now, because her power is so great, when she is in an alliance, like whoever she marries, her like power will become aligned with, and it can't be used against them. And so at the end of the previous book, she actually was in a marriage alliance with a bad man who is using her for bad. And the fae that we love, they actually are fight against her because she's forced to fight against them in the previous one, and she actually almost kills Jonas's brother. But she's protecting her grandfather when that happens. Now, once they rescue the grandfather and his brother doesn't die, it's all okay, they realize that the best way to harness her power is to have her be married to Jonas, because again, whoever she's married to, her power is aligned with them and it won't be used against them. And so at the start of this book, she's forced to marry Jonas and go and live with him, and now like her powers can't be used against them. So they don't plan to love each other, they don't plan to care, but they are each other's fated mates in a way, and so they're very drawn together. And as Scotty starts to get her emotions back, as she starts to come out of this haze she's been in, she starts to feel again, and it's very powerful. So why is this one like sexual healing? So she's never had pleasure with a partner before. She's not a virgin. She's been with other people before, but it was always kind of transactional, and it was her kind of being used by them. And she, you know, she wasn't necessarily raped, but she also wasn't getting anything out of it. She never really felt close to the person or felt loved. And so when her and Jonas decide to take their relationship from just being a marriage of, you know, alliance to more, she's so overwhelmed by all the feelings and emotions she gets. And when, you know, there's him giving her pleasure without wanting anything back. Like I said, this is a more kind of classic version of just like she's discovering that it can be an equal push and pull, that it can be love, that it can be more than just doing it because type of thing, you know? And it's just so beautiful. Like, it's so beautiful between the two of them. And so for me, because I just finished this one just kind of stood out as I found it very healing for Scotty, the way that Jonas treated her like such a treasure after she had been so mistreated. I just found it to be very beautiful. It was very romantic to me. So yeah, I thought it was great. So there you go. There's some different kinds of sexual healing, emotional healing, BDSMS healing. Again, I do have a link to another one of those if you want to read it or check it out. I do have links to all of the books I talked about, and hopefully to In Silence and Submission. Like I said, I can't remember if that is still available or not. Every once in a while, fanfic authors get annoyed with people and they'll like remove their stuff, and it's very sad when that happens, but they're allowed to do what they want. So if it's available, it will be linked below. But thank you so much for watching, friends. It means so much to me, and we'll see you next time. Bye.